dear viewers, it's George from Ireland, so welcome back to my channel once again. And in this video I'm talking about how Russia has terminated the grain deal. You might recall that way back in July there was a deal mediated by the United Nations and Turkey, indeed signed in Istanbul, which involved both Russia and Ukraine. Notably, there was such bad blood in this war because Russia had massacred so many civilians that the Ukrainians and the Russians didn't actually sign the same document, two separate documents, but nevertheless an identical text. And this was allowing Ukraine to export its grain from its few Black Sea ports that it still controls across the Black Sea. And these would not be Ukrainian ships, they'd be neutral ships. And then Russia would be able to stop and inspect these ships to see no contraband was coming in or out of Ukraine. The ships would sail on through the Bosphorus. That's the waterway which flows through Istanbul, Turkey, out onto the Mediterranean Sea and all over the world, because some countries are heavily reliant on Ukrainian grain and other foodstuffs, cooking oil and so on. These countries are Bangladesh, Egypt, Lebanon, quite a few others, several African countries besides Egypt. And that was due to run to the 19th of November this year. So it's a 120-day deal. So some money for Ukraine and preventing people starving in some of the less economically developed countries, because Ukraine is a major exporter of grain, wheat, cooking oil, other foodstuffs. And world prices were rising, as well as world energy prices rising, and that hurts people in advanced Western economies. But in less economic developed countries, it will push them towards death. Anyway, so it seemed in July was beginning to slow down from Russia. Is Putin wanting diplomacy? Is that why he's allowing this? He's always trying to curry favor with African countries, saying, oh, well, I helped you against Western countries. Well, the Soviet Union did, which means Ukraine did, as well as Russia. Ukraine is 25% of the Soviet Union's population. But anyway, so what obviously Russia doing now is about the worst of colonialism in terms of deliberately slaughtering thousands of civilians, using torture on a huge scale, attempting the erasure of a national identity. This is smash and grab imperialism with no concomitant benefit. There's no mitigating factor. There's nothing they can offer in terms of advanced technology, better medicine, education, women's rights, abolishing slavery, anything like it. No, quite the opposite. They're taking one of the freest countries in the former Soviet Union, the Ukraine, with real competitive elections, with free speech, with fair trials, all the rest of it, and trying to turn it back into some neo-Stalinist autocracy. Anyway, there was a large-scale drone attack yesterday on Sevastopol. That is that Ukrainian city in Crimea, which has been illegally seized by Russia. The Russian Black Sea Fleet is based there. And there was such friendship between Russia and Ukraine when they became independent. The Ukrainians even allowed the Russians a 25-year lease on the naval base. And that lease was going to come to an end in 2016. And whether they're going to renew that or not, and that's one of the reasons why Russia invaded, because it looked like Ukraine would not extend the deal by a further 25 years. One of the reasons why they invaded Crimea way back in 2014. There was this large-scale drone attack, the biggest of the war, the Russians say, on the Black Sea Fleet. Now, the Russians claim to have shot down 9 drones. They haven't said what the damage is. Clearly, it was some damage. Clearly, it's rattled them. So, in retaliation for this military attack, Russia said, right, we're ending the grain deal, which is mainly going to punish people in neutral countries, the sort of people who Russia wants to win over. Some of these countries, Lebanon, Egypt, Bangladesh, have at least abstained from United Nations votes. They've not actually voted against Russia for its illegal war of aggression. And then, without any corroborating evidence, Russia accused the United Kingdom of being involved in this attack. Is Russia trying to prepare an excuse to attack the UK? And then it said it's just discovered that last month the Nord Stream pipeline under the Baltic Sea was blown up by British people. Now, why on earth would the United Kingdom want to do that, to drive oil and gas prices even higher for itself? Which is preposterous. That pipeline was taking gas from Russia to Germany, Greifswald in Germany, and then all over the European Union. Of course, the UK is not in the European Union. So it's another preposterous claim. It's blatantly Russia blew it up. Russia has an interest in driving oil and gas prices higher because it makes more profit from selling at a higher price. And it's a way of pressurizing Western economies, trying to choke them off, make energy so expensive that they think that the Western countries are forced to come to the negotiating table and say, okay, we will stop arming Ukraine in return for you selling us more oil and gas. Anyway, So Russia's defense ministry claimed that some of the ships that were damaged in the attack yesterday in Sebastopol were involved in the grain deal. Because Russian warships then get to inspect these ships coming into and out of Chornomorsk and the other Ukrainian ports, Odessa. Yeah, Russia claims to have destroyed 16 aerial and maritime drones, but they lie about everything. They might have destroyed some, so it's clearly got them rattled. Now, remember where you heard it first. I said a couple of months ago Russia was going to end this grain deal early, and certainly not extend it, because they see it's another way of throwing the toys out of the pram, causing problems for other people, drawing attention to the conflict, and forcing other countries to say, okay, we've got to give the Russians what they want, or people are going to starve. They might say to the Egypt and Bangladesh, for example, abstaining is no longer good enough. We've actually got to vote our way in the United Nations if you want us to restore the grain deal. This is very bad news. Putin is willing to starve people to death in neutral countries in order to achieve his criminal goal of stealing Ukraine, of oppressing the Ukrainians, of trying to wipe out their national identity, of trying to destroy Ukraine as a nation, of opening his torture chambers in Ukraine, of having his soldiers carry out murder, rape, and pillage on an industrial scale. Anyway, so Russia says, well, its exports are having difficulty. Well, yeah, that's because of the illegal and unprovoked war that you launched. If you hadn't started this invasion, none of this would have happened. So in the days leading up to this, Ukraine said that Moscow had been deliberately going slow in inspecting the ships, and there were 170 ships backed up. Anyway, it's all very bad news. I mean, I don't think this is going to be restarted for several months, at least maybe never. So obviously things are not going terribly well for the Russians. They haven't lost. They might still not lose. Things are going to slow down as the weather's getting colder, as more snow sets in. There'll be bombardment through the winter. This is the muddy season is most difficult, which is now. And in a while, when it is very snowy, then yes, you can move on. There's maybe some hard, compact snow for vehicles, but obviously not as easy as in the summer. And one of the things is people thought the Russians might pull out of Kherson. I was wondering whether they would. They said they've completed the civilian evacuation and in fact brought in more troops to replace those who've been killed. So it looks like they're not pulling out of Kherson, because otherwise they think if we go to the east of that river, we'll never get back west of it again at the Dnipro River. They want to go on and take Odessa, the whole of the Ukrainian coast, and make it a landlocked country, make it much more difficult to export grain and so on. Because obviously Ukraine can export grain over land, but far less. It just doesn't have the road and rail capacity to export sufficient quantities to sustain its economy or feed others. Remember, the Ukrainian economy has shrunk by at least 30% this year. The Russian economy has shrunk by about 10%. So it's these Western subsidies are keeping the Ukrainians going. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this channel. Make sure you donate. And yeah, thank you for my haircut fund. I badly need more money towards that. Okay, goodbye then.